have a job, you can have life there, you can interact with other human beings, you can do all of these things, or you can wear an ankle monitor. There are things that you can do to protect society from you, and we'd be willing to give you accommodations and pay you so that we can reduce the risk or the harm that is present from a disease that we obviously need to know more about. But that doesn't mean we need to normalize or reduce penalties for people that harm the most vulnerable amongst us in society.
We're gonna continue on. Second topic in 2020. And this is the more explosive one.
I'm sure
So
we'll all agree.
okay, maybe we will. We might. It's a possibility. It's happened when I think a topic is explosive, and it's like everyone's like, "Oh, no, we all agree uniformly," and it's really fucking annoying. All right, so in 2020, a German director released a movie called The Trouble with Being Born. It's about a realistic childlike android who may be experiencing a sexual assault from their adult owner. Should films like this be made? Should artistic license have a limit? Is a film like this dangerous to the public as it could increase interest in child sexual assault? Or should art always be allowed to flourish no matter the cost? Yeah, so I got I actually learned something from Twitter. It was amazing because I just happened to open up Twitter and I saw someone else posted this thing. And yeah, it's like from 2 years ago. And it's exactly what it sounds like. There is a film that has a character. It's not actually a real child. It's Hollywood magic, right? From in Berlin, I guess. Berlin magic.
No, it's an actual child.
No.
Yeah,
I'm saying,
no.
oh my God, it's not. That's not that actual child though. Like that child is. There's a child playing it, but you don't see their face. That.
Oh, sure. Yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So like it's a amalgamation of stuff that's happened.
Well, they have two faces, but
that too. It's crazy. Anyway, the film is an interesting film. I have seen the film. It is in any case, it shows a it depicts a sexual assault happening. What people would call sexual assault. This was a real child. Yeah, is this a backdoor way of putting in like what was called pedophile propaganda in the first article that I read, or is this just art and it adds to society by its existence or whatever the fuck, right? So we'll go down the line. And we'll start with Ashley.
Oh, I'm getting to start with all of them. I think that regulating art gets really, really difficult because like what ends up happening is there's no uniform meaning from art. I know there's art that other people have called transphobic, for instance, right? That I've thought actually depicts dysphoria better than any like trans art post, right? That I would point to. I think that like art doesn't have a necessary meaning. So like as long as it's not like literal child porn, like I think it's fine. I think that the issue in trying to regulate art is you're never going to be able to say this specific thing is bad without like also unintentionally maybe hitting something else with the same logic. I think art should not be regulated, and I think that the only regulation should be like it's not literally a crime like child porn.
Thank you. Let's go to our friend Scott.
Yeah, so I don't think art should be regulated either by the state. Obviously, I think it should be regulated by the market and by free association. When we look at this film, it is quite obviously pedophilic in nature, both philosophically and through the series itself. One thing I do want to correct is there's this idea that, well, it's just an android, except what we learn about halfway through the film is that the android itself was created or meant to symbolize the actual daughter. And as the timeline skips through, it's also clear that the voiceover portion, that is the inner monologue of the android, is experiencing what the original children, both Emil and the girl, were experiencing. And that's why we have this discongruence with 10 years before in Belgrade. So the scenes of Belgrade are not meant to show an android. They are meant to show an actual child that is being molested here, and is being, made sexy and all these other things. It's also incredibly surrealist and subversive in the way that it jumps time. There's like an incongruence of the ghosts. There's an incongruence of the kind of like inner monologue and the repetitions, right? So we start off with something that feels more human, and it becomes less and less human as it goes on. So it's intended to disjar you because you're seeing and depicting these pedophilic scenes, and then eventually the android like is woven and subverted as less and less human, and many of the things that you think are its internal monologue or the things that it's saying are actually just repetitions that may have been pre-programmed into it. I think it's a disgusting piece of art. I think the idea that art is meaningless is bullshit. I think what art is an expression that is either a critique or prescriptive or descriptive of the world in which we live in, compared against our own self idea or our idealized self. And our values and goals eke out from our artwork. Whether or not it's critiquing society, prescriptive, or it's descriptive of your own subjective analysis and the differences, I think that those things are present. I think that's why some art kind of speaks to us, because it shows some truth about who we are, what our goals are, what we want to be, the way that we think the world works in some way, or the way that we want to be. I think it seeps through this film that this person has some pretty gross ideas, and yet you shouldn't stop that. As gross as that is, as harmful as that may be in some regard, you shouldn't have the state intervening in art, because that is incredibly problematic and against that person's freedom. What you should do is what some of these film festivals did and said, go fuck yourself, we're not screening your goddamn film. Lastly, I want to say that if you doubt that there is some philosophy and that there's some expression of beliefs and ideas, one need only look to the fact that the second character is named Emil, that just so happens to be the author's name of the book that is the exact same title, which is Nihilist Aphorisms. And you know that you're dealing with a piece of philosophy that is anti-natalist in nature, perverse in many other ways, but mostly just meaningless leftist critiques of the world and how horrible reality, birth, existence, death, life, and having children is.
Thank you so much. Okay. Corey Campbell, please.
Okay, so I did not watch the whole film, but I scanned through like 5 minutes just to like get a sense of it. And based off of what I like briefly saw, this just seems like whatever, a version of the film or the book Lolita, but just like I guess maybe with a twist or with a younger, well, basically with a younger star. So since the fact that Lolita exists, and even though I have no desire to watch it or any type of art like that, like I have no problem with it existing, and that like yes, if you're an adult, you can go and watch it if you like, but I think there should be obviously a very clear age cutoff in terms of if you're allowed to consume this type of content. But I think if you are an actual adult, hopefully you have the judgment to be able to like determine whether you want to go see that or not. I don't think, as far as I can tell, that this either normalizes that behavior, and I'm also, I think this blurs the line in terms of like there's other types of art. Like if you're for banning this, like there like depictions of children in paintings, naked children paintings like exist and they're glorified. But like yeah, I pretty much have no problem with this existing. But obviously it should just be reserved for adult viewing. That's basically it.
Renaissance art is disgusting. It should be burned. But let's go to Lactoid.
Yeah, I'll be frank. I similar to Corey, I didn't watch the full movie. Not only did I not have the time for the full movie, but I also didn't want that on my search history. Generally, I think it reminds me a little bit of the movie Cuties, right? Where Europeans make a really sketchy movie that's supposed to make some kind of deeper point or criticism. But then you remember that these movies are made in places that allow perverted relationships between adolescent children and adults, like France and Germany. Needless to say, I'm skeptical. I'm generally opposed to pornography involving children, softcore or not. I am in favor of artistic freedom and the ability for people to express themselves. But I think the same point in the movie could have probably been made while making sure that we aren't encouraging or visually exacerbating incredibly dangerous and predatory behavior. The risk posed by this needs to be factored in and weighed against the freedom of people to express themselves. If this movie goes too far in suggestive content depicting children, I think everybody here agrees there probably is some line that it goes too far. My line may just be set back a little bit further than a lot of people here. I'm maybe a little bit more on the side of banning, softcore pornography involving children. I don't think that is healthy or safe to be propagating to audiences.
What a brave move, banning softcore pornography involving children. Okay.
Hot takes as always.
Thank you, Lactoid. Much appreciated. Let's go to Revolution Underground.
Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and be entirely honest. Until this Reverie came up, I had never heard about this movie in the first place. So I did actually force myself to sit down and watch it in its entirety because fuck it, we've seen enough terrible things in this world. A movie isn't going to be the deal breaker. But honestly, it's one of the darkest things I've ever seen. But that doesn't mean that we should regulate art in that way. We already are doing enough book burning and any of that other censorship nonsense that we shouldn't be trying to regulate it away. Clearly, this is something that should be rated only for adults, but also we're basically all speaking from an American perspective. We're talking about a foreign film. So to regulate it would not only require us to lean on a foreign government, but it's just too much. And people should be allowed to make and create what they want to, regardless of how we feel about it.
Okay. Josh.
Yeah, I mean, to sort of keep this short and not reiterate any talking points from the panel so far. This one I had a little bit of problem with to gather all my thoughts, so I'll just keep this short. If you were to ask me if I was generally okay with this film being made, I'd say yes, in the defense of its artistic freedom. I consider it art, although very provocative, and some might say it depicts illegal things. I still consider it art. My main criticism of the film would be that Woolner, who is the director of the film, probably could have made that point she wanted. She probably could have made the point that she wanted to make while not depicting images of sexual abuse in children. And that's my broader point.
Isle.
I believe personally that we should do things to make sure that we do not allow this post-singularity nonsense where we allow androids to be like almost human, like you see in these video games and transhumanist fantasies. We shouldn't be doing that. As for the openness of art, I think that we should definitely allow artists to pursue their arts and their passions as best they can through their mediums, as long as it's all being taken care to make sure that nothing illegal is happening on set. Everyone is an adult that's consensual. If there is something like a little bit too risque, so I'm totally fine with them producing the movie, making the movie, exploring these themes, employing these actors and actresses that may be children. They just gotta be make sure that they're keeping the sex out, and or if for some reason they have to have a sexual scene with children in there, that the children are like taken care of, making sure that they have like ample mental health going on set, so they can be able to internalize and conceptualize what's going on, so they don't get fucked up by having this happen to them in a way that would be detrimental to their health and development. But I think that art is really important. It needs to be explored, it needs to be seen. It's just that once we see the art, we have to make a firm decision about society of what is acceptable and what we're willing to pursue and what we're not willing to pursue. But I think anybody should be able to at least bring up the topic in their art.
Hey, Doobie, please.
I think that it should obviously be banned. I watched an interview with the director after watching the movie, and she said something that really really bothered me. Right? What she said was that the narrative, the tone, the story, all of it came together on the editing room floor. Right, that's where the story came together, and the sexual innuendo and all this was inserted was in the editing room, because when they were filming that, it didn't have that tone, which I think is batshit crazy for her to say, because there not only is a sexual innuendo like obvious in these scenes, right? But there's a scene where he like slips out her tongue and her like robot vagina and washes them in the sink while she's sitting topless on the counter. Like, like what if that wasn't supposed to be like any kind of sexual innuendo, or the scene where she's laying with her ass like out, or like butt ass naked on the floor just staring at him. Like, what were you thinking when you filmed that then? If none of this was, meant to be sexual when it was being filmed, what was the thought process? Why did you film that? Like, I think that this is like another one of these cases where you have somebody that is like very, very fixated on the idea of being like an artiste, right? They want to be high-minded, they want to be whatever. So they explore an idea, quote unquote, which just means I think they're edgy to be edgy. They do some really dark shit. They explore something that's really gross, and then they call it art. And because they slap the art label on it, you have people defending it and saying, "Hey, this shouldn't be banned. This shouldn't be outlawed. This should be glorified, even in some places." Right, because they're exploring this really difficult topic. Oh God, I think it's stupid. I think that there is no deeper meaning here. I think that this person is fixated on the idea that they're an artist, and because they're an artist, they get to do all the edgy shit. And I wonder, for those of you who said that you wouldn't ban it, Scott, I can understand because he's an ANCAP, right? But for the rest of you, what's the line, right? So not only do you have a scene where you have like what's supposed to be a 10-year-old naked and multiple scenes after having sex with her adult like father, right? even though it's like an android, if they had like a full-on sex scene, right, with this,
It's not
this
always an android.
Sure, okay, but if they had a full-on sex scene with this 10-year-old giving this man a blowjob, right? If they didn't show it, if they just showed the back of the head, right, and giving this man a blowjob, is that enough? Like, at what point does it become child porny enough for you to say, "Hey, this shouldn't be allowed"? Like,
Sure,
I'm
think
like, where's the fucking line here? And why does calling something art give it like some fucking order of protection to you guys? It's ridiculous.
So, Duby, if I can clarify, or maybe just clarify in general. So, from what I understand from the article, is like if in fact there is a nude scene, like it wasn't filmed,
Multiple
like that is. But from what I understand, those are CGI scenes, as in like
Right, that's fine, right? So if you're saying, hey, if the line is, if they're gonna have a scene where somebody's fucking a 10-year-old, it needs to be a CGI 10-year-old. Is that your line? We can have child porn as long as it's CGI.
I'm open to that conversation. Like we're gonna get to a weird place in terms of like we
I
had
think you're
this
gonna get to a
discovery.
weird place where you're
Yeah, so
justifying producing essentially child porn for people.
yeah, especially with the advent of virtual reality. Like again, we're gonna get to a very weird place, especially like when people are probably gonna have these tools themselves in their homes to create this type of CGI or virtual reality content. And I don't like. Am I for the regulation of that? Like, I don't know at this point, but
You don't know?
given how the movie was filmed and based off of the article, like the parents seem to be
But
sort
okay,
of
but
involved in
Corey,
the
I know you
process.
didn't watch it, all right, and that's fine because it is a disgusting movie to watch. Like, it's not a comfortable movie to watch. I don't suggest any of you waste your time watching this thing. There's nothing to be gained from it, right?
and it's in German.
But and it's German, of course. But Corey, if the movie was just like an hour's worth of like sex scenes between this guy's CGI 10-year-old daughter and like this dude, that you wouldn't know whether or not that should be banned. You
Are
wouldn't
you
know
talking about?
whether or not
Well,
you'd
no,
be
no.
against that.
If Are you talking about actors acting that, or this is just some
Yeah, I'm talking about the two
CGI?
actors, but the nudity is CGI.
If that's if it comes into actual like explicit pornography, then I would probably not, almost certainly not be in favor of that. But if it's like all if something like that, it's just like pure CGI, and someone wants to produce that, then
Yeah, you know, the
sure.
facial expressions are real, the sounds are real. You actually do have a 10-year-old bouncing up on this man's lap, but the nudity is CGI. They're not actually having sex. You'd be okay with that.
Distributing that? No, almost probably not. But again, if someone wants to make that content, like again, these tools are going to be available to people at some
Okay,
point.
I'm not. Okay, I understand that somebody can do this currently. What I'm asking you is, if somebody does do this, should this be allowed on the airwaves? Should it be allowed on the internet so people to be able to go out and onto a website and watch this?
No.
Okay, but you said a little bit ago that the nudity that's in this film, where they have like a CGI 10-year-old breasts, right, or CGI the 10-year-old ass on the screen for a very long time for no fucking reason. Like it just like lingers there for no fucking reason for a very long time. Like it's like it doesn't make any sense, right? Because that's CGI, it's somehow okay. Why?
Yeah, so this comes down to where the line between, something that is actually sexualized and something that is a portrayal or just like a visual image. As in, there are paintings like an allegory with Venus and Cupid. That's a very like famous painting. That's literally a nude child who's like stroking, I believe, like the breast of his mother. That's a painting. Are you in favor of banning that? That's in public displays in museums. Would you be okay with that?
Can you agree? I think you're going to agree that there's a distinction between actual art, like a painting where you have a cherub and a goddess naked, right? Versus like there's just a full-on sex scene between two CGI, like an adult and a child. Like obviously there's a difference there, right? And I don't think calling the CGI art, even if it's like animated or whatever, right? Even if it took a lot of skill to put this thing together, I don't think calling it art makes it okay to produce that and to sell it.
I don't disagree with you. It comes down to so in my mind, it becomes difficult because I'm basically in favor of banning any sort of like whatever child imagery that is produced with the intention to, basically to elicit arousal in another person. Okay,
What
but
if-
since you
what
don't know
if-
the intentions of the person producing that content,
Wait.
like it's hard to tease out.
Wait, okay, hold on. But so this film, which again has multiple nude scenes with what is supposed to be a 10-year-old, so if again they linger on this little girl's ass and her exposed breasts for a very long time, and they have her posing and shit in little dresses. So if this makes somebody aroused, and I'm sure there are plenty of pedophiles out there that would be aroused by this, right? Why isn't that enough to say, hey, whether or not you intended for this to happen, you saying that it's art doesn't justify you producing what's essentially child porn. It's going to be consumed by pedophiles that are going to jerk off this little girl.
Yeah, because based off of what
Mine is like are real people being harmed here. So it's just a CGI like.
I think the normalization of child pornography does harm society. I think.
Doobie, I would add something because I think there's this distinction between what is art and what isn't art, and like certain bad things aren't art. I would go a step further and say that this is art. It's absolutely artistic, and that some art is evil because it represents evil ideas and an evil self-idealized self, and deconstructs or critiques the world from a subjective place that has evil motivations. And it's very clear that this is both art and evil, that sets up the male that is the child abuser as the hero of the story. It is when the child becomes a boy and is a meal, they are talking about going to see Pop. They're talking about they constantly reiterate this idea when they're terrified of thunderstorms. They break character from a meal and instead say that you smell like cigarettes and sunscreen. And he uses that against the child to say that this is just the way you like it, huh? Right? Like it is very clear that the man is broken without the sexual relationship with this child, and that the child yearns for the sexual relationship of this man under the oppression of an old woman that doesn't actually love the android, but instead must turn the android into a meal. And even then, she never loved a meal to begin with. And that is why she murders a meal, because she attempts to have sexual contact with the older woman, kisses her romantically on the lips, and she says, get out of here, pushes the android away, and then in return, when she attempts to get that love again, she pushes the android, and the android pushes them onto the table and watches them die and callously does it, and then lays down with the corpse of the older woman and begins to sing the songs like 10 years ago that were imprinted when she was a human. It is very clear that this film sets up the pedophile and the child abuser as the hero of the story. And yet it is surrealist. Yet it is deeply nihilist in the way that it attacks the idea of children and relationships, which is playing and hearkening back to the philosophy text from from Emil M. Sirora, I think is how you say his name, right? It's hearkening back to the name of the title. I'm sorry?
I believe it's a woman.
You know what it reminds me
No,
of?
that's the director.
The author of the book is a male.
Sorry.
The author of the book is a male, right?
Have you guys ever
It's evil
seen
art. That's what it is. And like we
And I
shouldn't
can
ban
agree with
it,
that.
but at the same
maybe
time, we should tell them to go fuck themselves. We should tell people involved in these things that they should never be around children, and we should forcibly remove them from private property in our society because they're fucking weird and we don't want them.
I think I agree.
But
with
so
you
this
here.
reminds me of the. Have you guys ever seen that meme with the dog and the animal abuser? This person's been fucking his dog, right? And so they come in. Yeah, there's a meme, right? So they come in, and it's like a furry meme, right? Where they're supposed to be saying that, hey, human animal love is real, right? So what it is they have a dog that's been taken away by the authorities because they found out this man was having sex with the dog. And the dog is like, hey, why won't they just take me back home? I miss what's his name? Why won't they just leave us alone? We're happy. Right? It's like that in long form, right? Because it's like it's pretty fucked, right? I think the intention is clear. Sure, we can call it art. Okay, I'm okay with calling it evil art. That's just I'd be for banning it, like at the government level.
It's the same as Nazi propaganda or communist propaganda, right? Like Stalinist propaganda posters are clearly art. Right? Like it has its own style, it has a message and a meaning. It takes talent and work and craft, and it's deeply laden with the ideals and values of the artists that produce this for the purpose of bringing about Nazism. But it's evil art.
Yeah.
Lactoid?
No, I think I've heard enough. I agree with Doobie. Send in the troops. Ban this. Fuck. It sounds awful.
I mean,
ban
she
the movie, ban
constantly
the book.
repeats.
We just
She
need to
constantly
be fair as a society that it's evil, and we should reject the messages that were being seen. But we should be
the android constantly says she doesn't need to know. Mom wouldn't let us do this, whilst embracing a naked older man, right? And then they subvert that tension later with introducing the ideas that the android is just a program reiterating other things, and at the same time subtly put in that we're talking about a real child in Belgrade 10 years ago, and the she doesn't need to know this. It's our little secret was when him and his daughter were away from the mother, and he was doing sexy photo shoots and fucking his own daughter. Like, it's evil art, period.
We all agree.
Yeah.
And here's my question. Let's say you have evil art that that if normalized within a society will lead to a large number, like we can let's say we can like measurably show this will lead to like a large number of coercive abuses against children, right? This is part of the logic in favor of banning child pornography. If we start to normalize this kind of art and we kind of see the same things, like we obviously can't have a society in which we're just having like kids molested because, hey, it's art. So like, how bad does the problem have to be before we say, hey, if you make this, we're gonna like come after you?
Yeah, well, so I would pose the question to you, Lactoid, in terms of like the painting that I described earlier, which I think is a pretty widely regarded. Well, I mean, it's in a museum. Like, are you in favor of banning that type of painting?
I don't think it's sexualized in the same way. So
the child is literally like stroking his mother's breast.
It's not, yeah,
it is obviously not sexualized in the same way as this fucking film. If you can stomach this fucking film, I have questions for you. I hope you never have children.
So
it's rough.
So breastfeeding is not inherently sexual, right? So growing up, I was in Sweden a lot, and On the beaches, when I was a child, like me and my friends were running around naked. It was just normalized. It just wasn't really like seen as a big deal. It wasn't sexualized at all. Nobody saw it as like a sexual thing. There wasn't any kind of sexual innuendo. Nobody was like propositioning people. There was, it just didn't happen, right? It was safe. If at any point on the beach there were people like making it sexual, then we have an issue, right? And does it require some level of like context and some level of social aptitude to recognize when somebody's making a situation sexual? Yeah, like you have to like be able to interpret that and be able to know when it's getting to that point where, yeah, breastfeeding is not sexual because there's nothing sexual about it. But when you're depicting somebody who apparently just had sex with an older guy who's a 10-year-old depiction, and now like you're showing a bunch of nudity along with that context, now we're introducing a sexualized scenario. I think at that point, we're moving into child pornography territory, where I think now we start justifying intervention.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily disagree with you. So then I would ask the follow-up question, Lactoid. Rewinding a couple panels ago, like what was sexual about that teacher teaching the classroom in that scenario?
Why are you bringing this L back up?
That's not a so if it's an L, let's tease it out. So what was sexual? You said breastfeeding is not sexual. Clearly not. Contextual things matter. So what was sexual about that teacher?
I'll have to think about that a little bit more. I truly believe that the teacher's intentions were partially sexual.
You know their intentions?
I don't know, but part of determining which actions to regulate is you make predictions about people's intentions. You make predictions about why are people making actions that they do. I mean, I think my main arguments for that were, you're exposing children to an environment in which they're being distracted, and in a hypersexualized environment where the kids are definitely perceiving it in a sexual way. I think when we're talking about an environment with children, when we're talking about an environment with children, I think how the children are perceiving it is also important. But when we're talking about adults, now we're talking about like how a rational observer would interpret the situation. And it sounds like this movie is any rational observer would say this is a sexual situation.
Hey, just to give people, I just wanted to give people a quick I thought you were done, so I apologize for stepping over you. I was just giving the context of what Corey was bringing up is the I guess it was in Canada, right?
Yeah,
where
Canada,
there
high
was
school.
a
trans fire.
It was a trans individual
worse than that,
who had like a very large, comically sized a plastic breast, and
Sure.
like they were a high school teacher, and we were talking about like what exactly is sexualized about this, and should it have been banned, or should this person have been fired, should they be allowed to work with kids, all that good stuff. Well, not good stuff, but anyway, so that's what we're talking about. Go ahead. So Lactoid, if you have anything else to say, again, I apologize for stepping on you.
Yeah, I guess like where I'll end. I guess where I'll end is, it's an interesting question, and I'm glad you brought it up. I'll think about it, and maybe this answer is inconsistent for some reason. I don't think it is, though. The idea here is I think children, we protect them the most from sexualization, right? And so the line for things that we're exposing children to, I think, is set way further back. So I'm not even sure I'd be in favor of having like the nudity or the cherubs like in a middle school or a high school. I'm not even sure I'd be okay with that, right? But when it comes to like the line is maybe a little bit easier. We're kind of setting that back a little bit when it comes to adults. But then when you start involving children in the actual things that the adults are consuming, now we have the issue again, right? The involvement of children is where the issue begins, regardless of who's receiving like the sexual content and who's laying it out. And to be honest with you, maybe this is an argument that like we shouldn't have beaches like maybe that's an argument we shouldn't have beaches like that where we have kids like I experienced growing up. Maybe that just shouldn't be a case. I think that's actually probably a pretty strong counter argument that shouldn't be normalized. And to be honest with you, in Sweden right now, that's very much becoming not normalized. Sweden is moving away from that.
Ashley, and that's super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know like a beach like that existed. In fact,
most beaches, almost all of them. That's how it was.
Oh, interesting. That's quite interesting. Thank you for the information. Ashley, please.
I hadn't watched the film. I just read with the articles and Wikipedia's on it. I didn't realize how bad it was. Thank you for enlightening me, Doobie. I think that it is very fair to ban this film. I think that what it depicts is like very. I agree. I guess I just wanted to say that, like, yeah, I agree. I think that this is a case where, yeah, I wouldn't be for like lolicon either, where it's like people make CGI children. That's like a very like there there's a very real problem of that happening in VR spaces where people will make very sexualized children and actually do that. And usually it's two adults, one of which is playing a child, but that doesn't make it okay. And I think that that's deeply troubling. And I think that, yeah, I could totally see how a movie that has that type of nudity probably
So,
would be bad.
So this is where I probably disagree with people. Go ahead, Prime.
oh yeah, let me get this out. And maybe we might have going in a similar direction. I don't know. So I've talked about this topic, but well, not this particular movie. This movie it's a lot. But like what to ban? We're talking about even like erotica, right? And it seems like the dividing line here is fidelity. Like if we are having a piece of, well, erotica or whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? That is including children, right? Depictions of children. Be very clear, depictions, right? There are no children actually involved. In my mind, like when no one is being harmed, like it's very difficult for me to say that we gotta ban this thing, right? And so this runs the gamut, right? So from like stories, right? Like just text written where like the age of a character, right, is written as like younger, or where it goes to what you guys are talking about, CGI or in a virtual space, or even this film, though it's not erotica. Like it runs the gamut, and it seems at some point, right? This is where Lactoid was, I think, going when he mentioned that or Lactoid and Corey, when we talked about that picture, right? Like it doesn't have a fidelity, and but at some point you guys see a dividing line. I don't know where that line is, right? And I can't find a good reason at any step that I see to say, okay, this is where that we should cut that off. Where this is the specific point in time where it's too much, and then this is the danger. So yeah, I'll put that out there.
So,
let's go to Scott, and then Ashley, you can go back in.
Yeah, so the answer is there is no line. But let me explain. There is no line where you justify state action against perceived things that are deviant or degenerate in your opinion. If you express or show this to children in such a way that it causes permanent harm, then they're stopped from not being a criminal and they need to be punished and their children taken away. If you utilize children in any way, I think we kind of all agree that that is a hard line. But there is also no line from kiwi farms and keffels, or whomever, loving to go into these internet forums and finding out who the fuck you are and telling your employer and telling your friends and telling your neighbors what a disgusting and degenerate piece of shit you are and that they shouldn't work with you, and making your name and your face public if you're stupid enough to do so. The fact of the matter is that without, this is again why I argue for free association. The type of society that I would advocate for wouldn't tolerate these people living in my society. We would simply say, you're not welcome here. And I don't mean that in a fucking American History X type situation. I simply mean literally, you're not welcome here, and move them out forcibly from my community and make their face and their name known because they're sick fucks. At the same time, when people are producing art, there is gray lines. And where that line is for some and for others is going to be a different line. You know, Salvador Dali is a sick fuck, obviously. Watch his fucking films and his discussion of his father, and you'll be like, wow, this guy's fucking degenerate and sick and weird, right? Maybe he's struggling with his own sexuality in a society and culture that can't understand him. And maybe his art has value for that. in a way that normal people can't understand, but in a way that speaks to the human condition that is valuable to us all. But that doesn't mean I want to fucking hang out with Salvador Dali.
Thank you, Ashley.
I think that the real damage that this does, Prime, just to respond to you, I think that like there is real damage in this. It normalizes these concepts, and I think that like for for pedophilia, I think that's very important that these people get actual clinical help and not see that they're. I think you can do that without normalizing it. You can normalize getting help for it and normalize that like people are just this way and it's not in their control. But I don't think you can normalize the action safely ever. I
You think we
that
can really?
what?
I mean,
I said we can't.
do you think it's possible
Possible to what? I don't think we can.
to normalize getting help for a medical condition without normalizing the medical condition? It's a rough question, but I mean, what has happened with every other mental health issue is that they've become normalized and in some ways even badges of honor and popularized. Can we do that with pedophilia?
I think in this case, like we have to. I think that the issue is that like you can, like some people are just born this way. They don't pick to be this way. But then if you were to say this is okay, right, then why would you need to get help for it? I think it's a very fine line where, yeah, you do need to get help for it. But yeah, it is something that can just happen to anyone. People don't choose to be this way.
I think we could treat it kind of like drug addiction or like tobacco use or something, like where we say like when you're doing it, like everyone recognizes that it's like kind of bad that you're doing it, and then when you say, oh, I quit, or like, oh, I went and got help for it, everyone's like, that's fucking awesome, man, like good on you. I'm like really happy for you that you're better now. Maybe we can begin to shift the narrative towards that when it comes to like pedophilia, where everyone's like, man, you really gotta fucking like, that's not okay. Like you need to go get help or stop that. And then when you do, everyone's like, happy to welcome you back once you're rehabilitated.
The problem is that
if you can be rehabilitated,
we're going to clockwork orange you. You will be rehabilitated.
No, like there's no known psychological intervention that has anything approaching decent efficacy or even majority efficacy for pedophilia. And for there's some stuff that has worked with paraphilic disorders, but pedophilia, it seems, is very deeply and strongly imprinted. And so the answer that I would give is that we should ostracize and move these people completely out of society. And if they want to be members of society, then they can voluntarily choose interactions that make people comfortable, such as voluntarily wearing an ankle monitor.
So Scott, actually, I don't know the research into like the therapies, right? So I'll take your word on it, and it matches with what I've heard previously. But would the goal here not be necessarily to like change their outlook, their perspective, their sexual desires, or simply their behaviors, right? In fact, we had a conversation about this. Oh, actually, I'm not sure if you're there, but we had a conversation about this previously, where it's like when we're talking about child abuse, there are different like when we're talking about pedophilia, there's different cohorts of that, and there are individuals who have like a sexual reaction to a person who is a minor. And then that's it, right? Like it's a thing that happens, but whatever. They'll move on with their life and they will marry a person of adult status. And then that runs the gamut to like individuals who actually offend, right? And like this is the only thing that they know how to do, right? And they will offend. Like so, like because we put them all in one group and treat, rather than introducing any nuance into it, say like equal bad, and so we can't have a conversation about it, then I think it makes it difficult for us to find effective solutions. So specifically, relating it back to what you just said, when we're talking about like having options for people who might actually offend, then for that specific cohort, maybe it's simply like, well, control your behavior, right? You've come here looking for help. Great. Let's get you to control your behavior. Now, if you can't, of course, then we do other things. We put you in jail.
I wouldn't say that you should do anything to them that is involuntary if they haven't actually harmed anybody.
You wouldn't say that, okay? But I'm saying I was
Right.
asking about like in terms
But
of
I'm
like
saying
the behavior.
we as a society shouldn't accept them into society unless they're willing to take precautions that limit their danger to such a degree that they're unlikely to be able to offend. If they want to voluntarily go to jail, I mean, they could if they want to. If they want to voluntarily wear an ankle monitor so that they're tracked everywhere they go, we can if we want to. And those people, I think, would be supremely valuable if they subjected themselves to research and better understanding, and we were able to do, we were able to work with those people. I'd even be willing to set up a charity organization that would be willing to pay pedophiles to come forward and wear an ankle monitor and to go through different forms of talk therapy so that we can find psychological interventions, because that's of benefit to everybody. But that doesn't mean I should let them anywhere near a fucking school without, POS restrictions.
No, I think we're saying more or less the same thing. I was talking about like mitigation efforts for the behavior rather than like trying to change the fact that they were, attracted to kids. So I think we're more or less saying the same thing. Fair enough. And anyone else? A revolutionary?
This I mean, I definitely did not expect this conversation to go in this direction, because typically conversations like this end in a lot of societally acceptable bloodlust. And I know you all have seen it where people just say, oh, we should all insert expletive deleted when it comes to this entire community of ill people. Now, we do want to stay, of course, away from thought crimes, but it's one of those situations where how do you ever get these people to come forward and subject themselves to research under the cultural climate that we've created, where it is so common for people to jump to vigilante murder as public policy? I'm not sure how we get there.
We have to change the culture on that, I guess.
Yeah, it just seems like that's an uphill battle that I'm willing to wage that fight, but I definitely don't have any ideas on this one. If anybody else does, please.
We can start by
I feel
actually
like-
like punishing them more, right? I mean, you have people like to catch a predator that they're get probation or they're out after 1 year, despite the fact they were like fully intending to show up and like rape a kid. I mean, you could just like start stacking up penalties on that.
Or if I may ask, Lacto, because maybe I'm not understanding the conversation, but from what I understood, Revolutionary was making the argument to like change the culture such that it's less stigmatized. And you
the stigma's good. The stigma, I think, is one of those things
Well,
that's
but
almost
rather
going to
like,
be impossible to get rid of. But how do we make it so they're willing to come out of the shadows so that people can study them? Because right now,
to confess that you
I
have
would
these thoughts.
assume they're seeing the same conversations that we're seeing. This is literally the first conversation I've seen in years that hasn't jumped to vigilante murder.
I think you're talking about two things and you're putting them together, right?
Twitch TOS.
One of them is the natural instinct of anybody to protect children with violence and aggression. And the other, right, is the stigma. I think you can increase the stigma and have a culture that does not permit violence against people who have not harmed other people, right? I think these are two separate concerns, and I think with increased stigma to a society that accepts violence towards other people, that isn't necessarily true of just pedophiles, right? This own panel with other people on it has talked about massive violence towards drug dealers before, right? Towards other forms of crime. It was you, Doobie, right? But like other people have talked about utilizing violence against people that have committed crimes. Now, in terms of thought crimes, right? We should never be engaging in utilizing aggression towards anybody. It's not justifiable unless they are the aggressor in the situation. But that being said, that doesn't mean that we can't increase the stigma. And so, like, what I would say is that we can have a society that says if you're caught harming a child, fuck you, you go into general population, and if you get murdered, you get murdered. And at the same time, say, look, if you come forward, we as a society have no problem sending you to a really nice prison facility where you'll be studied, where you'll be given a white picket fence home, where you'll have internet monitored, obviously, where you'll be segregated by sex because we don't want any kids there, right? But you can have a job, you can have life there, you can interact with other human beings, you can do all of these things, or you can wear an ankle monitor. There are things that you can do to protect society from you, and we'd be willing to give you accommodations and pay you so that we can reduce the risk or the harm that is present from a disease that we obviously need to know more about. But that doesn't mean we need to normalize or reduce penalties for people that harm the most vulnerable amongst us in society.
That's what
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
my
Like,
concern, my
maybe I'm
concern is
explaining
that
this
we
wrong.
are normalizing it. So we're going the other direction, right? So
Yes.
rather than normalize, giving these people help, we're normalizing the attraction. We're normalizing sexualizing children.
This film is an example of it, obviously.
Okay, so let's make sure that we're incredibly clear on what we're saying. So, what I'm saying is that okay, maybe you all have more hope in the human condition than I do. I'm not sure that this is the type of thing that we should destigmatize or want to destigmatize. What I'm
Notice.
saying is that stigma is almost inherent with the action, and I think that's pretty much baked into the cake that we really can't do anything about that. But how do we tamp down on the cultural violence in a way that it would allow us to find these people and to study them?
I think just to be clear, when we're talking about destigmatizing it, I don't think anyone here is saying that like the action is okay or that we should destigmatize the action. I want to be very clear about that.
Mhm.
I'm saying that, in my opinion, and I think everyone else is, that in destigmatizing it, we're talking about this attraction because you don't really have control over that. That's something, in fact, most pedophiles are actually molested as children, right? I believe I could go look that up, but
some
I believe-
disproportionate number, yeah.
Yeah, a higher amount. So it's like it's not like these people decided one day, yes, I want to like children in this way. They didn't, and like I think treating them like they had control over their current state is really, I think it.
I don't think
really
it matters. I don't think whether it was because they were exposed to too much sunlight or because their uncle grabbed their dick or whatever. I think how they got that way doesn't really matter when the end result is this person is a danger to children, so we can't have them around children.
But
Like,
like
it's
this
that-
becomes thought
Well-
crime. Like if
No,
somebody,
not really.
Also, Doobie, if they have these impulses, but they have like the wherewithal to go get help and to not act on them, I'm not sure this person's really that much of a danger to society.
Yeah,
There should be there should be a carrot and a stick here, right? Where we're like, the stick is like, if you do this, or if we think you're planning on doing this, or like we set up a sting operation and you come or something, we like drop a fucking hammer on you and like crush you under this hammer.
Choice of words.
Yeah.
The hammer of the state, like 10, not an actual hammer, okay, but like the hammer of the state, like 10 years, something crazy, right? But like the alternative is if you come forward and like get help and don't do this shit, like we're not going to come after you. We're not like, the state's not going to drop the hammer. Like it's going to be civil. Like that's.
But
I
the
think,
thing
Yeah,
is, I
do
still
you-
feel like we need test subjects because it seems like from everything I'm reading scientifically, like there's still a huge debate about what causes this. It feels like we don't know enough outside of we know it's caused by something that's broken inside the brain.
It's
Well, I think
Doobie,
we also need to keep in mind that the
uh,
vast majority of people who molest children are not actually pedophiles. Like they don't have the pedophilia, right?
So,
they're just,
Doobie,
obviously-
that's one thing I was going to ask, and that's basically what our friend Ashley and Lecter are trying to get to, is exactly what are you talking about in terms of like an offender or potential offender? Are you saying, like Ashley says, like this might be a thought crime? You said not really. Are you specifically talking about people who have actually offended, or people who are in that like cohort that might offend, right? That might actually do these things? What do you? but haven't yet. What do you actually
So
think?
I guess the way that I'll explain it is, I actually mentioned this. I brought this example up a long time ago when we were on that panel with Mr. Girl and Destiny, and we're talking about like crossing the street if a black person is walking toward you. One of the examples I gave, right, to kind of further that line of argument is, hey, if you had somebody knowing that the vast majority of people who molest children are not actually pedophiles, right? They actually have a normal sexual attraction to adult women or adult men or whatever, but because they have the opportunity, they grope children or whatever, they molest children. So they don't have the paraphilia of like pedophilia, right? So given that that's the case, if somebody that you know was an open pedophile and was getting treatment for this pedophilia, for an actual like paraphilia that they have, like a mental issue that they have, came to you and said, "Hey, if you're going out for the weekend and they're like, hey, let me watch your kids, I'll watch your kids for you," you'd
Hell
probably say
no.
no, even though you understand that the vast majority of people that molest children are not pedophiles, and this person specifically is trying to get help for their pedophilia, right? You'd still probably say no, right? So
Still
you'd probably
might have to
say,
slap
hey,
him for
you're
asking.
more of a risk than another person's going to be. So I'm gonna say no and pick the other person instead. Right. I don't. So it's no way. I don't think it's thought crime to just acknowledge that these people are when they're around children, they put children at a greater risk. That's just the case because they have like a mental illness, or if they're like or they're just men. Right. I think it's reasonable for people to be weird about leaving. If you drop a kid off at like a nursing home or something, and there's a bunch of dudes there, I think it's reasonable for people to think it's a little weird and be uncomfortable with that. I think that's normal. Like, because men tend to be the ones that do this shit.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of stories about like teachers.
Yeah, it's not all men, right? Like it's not, but it's mostly men.
It's mostly
Well,
men.
most crime is committed by mostly men, right? Just generally, like men are just not as
Well,
safe to be
also,
around.
Yeah, men bad.
also sexual imprinting just seems to affect men more, right? So like trauma or like really big things that occur while you're still developing sexually for women, right, is less likely to develop a paraphilic disorder or some form of sexual imprinting, whereas it's more likely to increase their libido or decrease their libido. Whereas with males, it's more likely to sexually imprint, right? So when we did like kind of the original studies trying to understand sexual imprinting, what we did is we took goats and sheep and we kind of mixed them up as they grew up. And what we found is that the male goats would engage in sexual relationship with sheep. And then even when we put them back with goats, they would not fuck goats. They would only fuck sheep. Whereas the females would still give that kind of like the signifiers that they wanted sexual interaction regardless of where they were. And that was kind of the beginning of the research to try and understand sexual um, paraphilic disorders, right? Many of these are just fetishes, but fetishization also tends to be more common in men, right? It just happens to be that pedophilia, hebephilia, ephebophilia is, gonna be more common amongst men, or is gonna be far more problematic than being in defeat. But yeah, I mean, like the other issue is that we don't even know if the trauma and the sexual imprinting is really what's causing this. What we know is that people that are pedophiles or child molesters, right, will say that they were sexually molested at a higher rate than those of the general population. But we're more often than not, we're not actually looking at evidence from their life. We're looking at self report. And there's obviously an incentive towards the child molester or the pedophile to go, oh, this happened to me. This is why I'm like this. I'm also a victim, right? Than there is for the general population to let everybody know, oh, by the way, I was sexually molested by my uncle or, my dad's friend. It's far more likely that those people would keep that under wraps and not talk about it and underreport. Whereas it's an incentive to overreport for the child molester, the pedophile, because it gives you empathy for their situation. So like we don't even really know that they're actually molested or abused at a higher rate. I mean, we suspect it. It seems likely, but like the data is like really, really kind of sparse.
Oh, that holds true for, I think, a lot of things, especially when it comes to assessing crime and the roots of crime or even just deviant behavior. But Dubie, I want to ask maybe a clarifying question just to maybe
Yeah,
understand
but
your
some things
position.
are easier to track.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, like I said, we're probably going to get to a weird place. So, what if
And
we
we're
get
already
to the
there.
place? Yeah, what if we get to the place that you know, just from scanning someone's brain, either likely probably through like MRI or fMRI to be specific, that you can sort of predict or you can observe that, hey, this person's probably like having these types of thoughts. What would you do with that person?
I would put them into some kind of treatment program, right?
Okay,
And
but
keep them
you would
away
like
from the
automatically
general
like
population.
okay, as in like essentially like put them in prison, but provide them treatment essentially.
It doesn't need to be a prison. It could be like a
Like a rehab
like a
center?
rehab type place, but like I'd mandate it. I had to make it mandatory.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So I guess still a prison, just like a nicer prison.
Well, I guess what Scout outlined, and which yeah, like I can sort of get behind that in terms of like yeah, I think we should move to the
Mine
place
would be
where
Mine
Okay,
would
but
be
I gotta say something.
voluntary.
Yeah, his would be voluntary. Mine would be mandated. Like I wouldn't give them the option. But like
I would just kick him
Corey,
out
I
of the
gotta say,
fucking community.
Go ahead,
Corey, I gotta
Juby.
say, like, I feel like and it's okay if you've like shifted positions, right? But I feel like at the start of this, you were much more okay with depictions of like naked children, even sexualized depictions of naked children being on the screen, being in movies, etc. And it seems like you've kind of backed off that. Like, did you change your position?
I don't think well, so you're being on the screen means a lot of things, like being
I
on someone's
mean, CGI little girl tits.
yeah.
It's a phrase I wasn't expecting to hear today. Good
As in
Lord.
like based off of everything that I've heard from the description of the movie, and like again, I've seen little bits and pieces, like I scanned through it, I just like jumped around to the progress bar. And like and based off what was in the article, like all of any like explicit sexual content is implied, and like there are depictions of nudity, but like all of the sexual relationship aspect appears to be implied. Am I incorrect in that assessment?
Uh, yeah. Well, no. Well, it's
I mean,
like they get to the edge a few times, like in the pool where he has like up against the wall of the pool, and they're speaking very suggestively. Uh,
and then there's the butt buckle sound of them, like the
yeah.
father. Yeah. So so you don't see any penetrative sex. You don't see like
They
You
couldn't
don't-
make that.
yeah. Yeah. They don't it doesn't see anything that you would see in porn or anything like that. It's just that like it implies this is a thing that is happening.
Yeah. So, like I said, this just seems like another whatever telling of the movie Lolita or whatever from also the book Lolita. Like based off what I
Okay, so I'm
know.
gonna ask you again. So, like, if they did show the sex scenes, would that if if it was like an artistic reason, right? So they were doing it to highlight the main push of the story, which according to the director, which I think is bullshit, is that you know, objects don't really care what they're being used for. So this android object, little girl, didn't really care that she was being molested or assaulted or raped or whatever you want to call it. It's just an object that was having something done to it. Didn't care about the morality of the thing. It was just something that was happening to it. That's what the director says the point of this was, which I think is
a lie.
bullshit on its face, right?
No,
But
it's a
but if-
lie because it's heavily implied that in Belgrade you're talking about the actual daughter.
Yeah, yeah. So, but if that's what she said it was, right? She says, "Hey, this is my intention. This is what I'm attempting to portray with this. So to get there, I need to show this little girl having sex with an adult. I'm going to swap her you know naughty bits out with CGI, but we're going to have a full on sex scene with a little girl and an adult. Like, would that be okay with you? Like, would you allow that to happen?
On as in like that's in cinemas for no.
Okay, but why?
At least to me that is pretty much that it's either it is explicitly pornographic or like it skirts the line into
But it's
pornographic
artistic,
territory.
and their intention is to push this other idea.
Yeah, that's where it gets blurry, right? In terms of like, I guess where's that line between whatever erotica and like explicit pornography? I think when you're showing, or I don't know, I guess there's some semblance of penetrative sex. Like to me, that is pornographic.
What if it was a hand job?
I think that is also, in my mind, also pornographic.
Okay, so when you have like genitals involved, Well, actually, I mean, we do have genitals involved in the film, if you consider
Yeah.
little girl nipples genitals. But and you do see his dick a couple times. So if there are genitals involved in the sex act or the implied sex act or whatever, then that's crossing the line. But up until the point where they actually show the genitals, it's not okay. So what if what they used to do in PG-13 or even like rated R movies, right? Where they didn't want to go like commit to the actress having her ass bouncing on the guy's dick, is they would have the covers up over her ass and they'd be in bed and she'd just be like wiggling around on the guy while he's in bed, right? And this was them having sex with the covers like up to her up to like her hips and her thighs, right, to cover it. If they just did that, right? So they didn't actually show the sex act itself, right? They didn't show any genitals, but they showed the little girl grinding on the guy. Like, is that over the line for you?
So
Like,
yeah,
I'm trying to
so
understand like where your line
yeah.
is because it
So
doesn't
you're
make
basically
sense.
outlining a situation where like nothing is visually shown, but you're implying the motions of sex, right? Is that pretty much a good
Yeah.
understanding? Yeah. And in that case, like, it's not content that I would consume, but like I can see that as somehow getting some sort of like passing.
So you're
Whatever.
at softcore child pornography right now.
Doobie, where's your line? I'm curious.
I think sexualizing children at all is just not. That's totally different.
So when I think about this though, and I think one area where Corey might have a point is, like I said in the beginning, I think everybody has a little bit of a different line here. My line is kind of more in line with yours, Doobie, I think. But at the same time, like let's imagine another situation like in Nickelodeon where they had the director apparently is like a weird sexual fetish about feet and has like children wiggling their toes in front of a camera. Should that be banned if we know the director is getting some kind of weird like sexual?
Yeah, I think you
pleasure?
should be in fucking prison.
Yeah,
actually,
fair enough. Fair enough.
So
Dan Schneider. That's yeah. All right.
if I may interrupt, sorry if I interrupted you, Lacto. If you want to finish your point.
No, I was going to say like we can imagine like other movies too, like Romeo and Juliet, two children kissing. I mean, is that like somewhat pornographic? It is. I think like for me, like what you're doing is you have to weigh when we're considering banning something. You have to weigh the artistic freedom, and then you weigh that against the risk of incentivizing and creating non-consensual harms generated by this expression. And child pornography is obviously way over the line. I think this is closer to that than like Romeo and Juliet. I don't think I would ban Romeo and Juliet, even if like some weirdo got off on that. If that makes sense.
And yeah, Dude, if I can also try to clarify where your line is. So are you also based off of like what you've described in terms of like pretty much like no hint or obviously no explicit sexualization of children, but like no hint. So are you in favor of, for example, like banning Game of Thrones?
Wait, how does Game of Thrones sexualize children?
It does. It absolutely
I think
does.
in one of the early seasons, like I think Sansa, when like the castle whatever is being taken over, like Sansa's in the process of attempted rape. It doesn't happen because I think Clegane the Hound intercepts, but there's
later on she gets actually raped. In the show.
Yeah, okay, but they're not really clear about what her age is. In
No,
either of those scenes.
what?
I think the
No,
first one she's clear. Wait, hold on. How old is Sansa supposed to be when Ramsay rapes her? Like in the show, not like how old does the show say she is? Because my understanding is that the show plays with the ages of all these people, and they're all out of whack with what's in the book.
Yeah. So, but hold on, we could just talk about the book because you're right. The show like ages people up. I remember having a conversation when it first came out. They age it up so it wouldn't be child rape. Okay, so let's assume that Sansa is 18, whereas she is sexually assaulted. But in the books, she is not. She is supposed to be a younger child. In the show, even then, right? Like there's a scene, and it's really fucking weird because of the actress. There's a scene where she's in King's Landing, and she's like really upset, like she's like freaking out about her sheets, right? And she's like just had her period.
Had a period. Exactly.
Even though
That's
like this actress is clearly like
mute.
fucking
It's
19,
11.
like she's like, even though like this actress is clearly older, so that's why it's super weird, right? So it sounds like she's still pretty young in the show, but even then, in the books, she is younger. So like, should the books be banned?
And the series is based off the books.
Yeah, I think that there's a good argument for banning stuff like that in books. Like the one that people point to a lot is what's his name? Stephen King, right? Where at the end of it, he has like a child orgy, right?
Hmm.
For some fucking reason, right? He
Wait,
decided to have a
what?
child orgy. Yeah,
Isn't
Yeah,
at
if
that
you
when
the
read
like
end
the
of
book,
defeat the
yes,
clown? That's like one of the tricks
yes.
he
yeah,
used
they
to defeat the clown.
needed to create the bond in their group, and to do
Oh
that, they all
god.
had they all
Yeah.
like gang.
I've
How
never
how
even
con-
seen the
what
movie. You're saying this
convenient for
happened?
no, this isn't in the movie for
Yeah, it's
obvious
not in the
reasons.
movie. Yeah, I've seen
Well,
the
and
movie. It's not. It's
it's
definitely
not
not in the movie.
it's not quick either. It's not like they imply it with a sentence or two.
Yeah, so I
I'm
think
never
there's
giving that man my money again.
Stephen
Fuck
King's
him.
just weird.
Well,
yeah,
no,
so I think there's like
I
a good
think
argument for that. But
Doobie, finish your thought,
no.
please.
So I think
Hold on. I'll go right to you, but Doobie was in the middle of a thought. And then we'll go to you, Scott, please.
yeah, so I do think that there's a good argument for banning shit like that. I think that when you're talking about like a book, it's a little bit more. I think there's a little bit more wiggle room there because you're not seeing this thing, and you can take into account the tone of the thing that's being said, right? So, for example, and I haven't read Game of Thrones like the books, but I'm assuming that when George R. R. Martin was writing it, that scene where Sansa is raped or where they attempt to rape her, it's not like a sexual thing. He's not like playing up the, the way that her breasts look or the way that, or how tight she is or whatever the fuck. Right. But if he were, I think that'd be an issue. So I think you can take the tone of the words being used in the book into account. I wouldn't be okay with the books like glorifying sex acts with children, which is a big problem in the United States right now because you have a lot of school districts putting exactly those kind of books where children are jerking each other off and fucking each other in like school library shelves.
no, what I think you're describing, and this is why I'm so hardline on this, is that you're describing and showing even in this panel a large diversity of thought and subjectivity on what is and isn't appropriate. Where is that line? What is art and what stops being art? What is good art and what is evil art? It's very subjective. And so this is the problem.
Scott, one second. Just sorry, I need to step away for like 2 minutes, but I'm still listening. But my girlfriend
Okay.
needs some help really quick.
But this is the issue that we have with state laws in trying to determine the line of what should and shouldn't be banned. That's the problem. What should and shouldn't be banned should be very clear and objective. Exposing children to things that cause permanent psychological or physical harm, and that's it. That's the only role that the state has. Okay? If you want to do your fucking lolly hentai that's super realistic, you should be legally allowed to do that.
Is there
And
objective truth?
I should. What's that?
I said, is there objective truth?
I don't know if you want to open that right now.
I believe there is other
Yeah,
you know,
I think there is
postmodern
objective truth.
postmodernists, leftists wouldn't say so, but I think those people are all idiots.
I mean,
But what I'm saying is what we need to normalize is we need to normalize parents that are involved with their children. What we need to normalize is communities that separate and self-regulate, much like the Amish do, the Beachy Amish do, the Mennonites do, people that have recognized that society has become fucking sick and instead they become their brother's keeper and they come together in order to live a life that aligns with their values and goals. And what we need to normalize is discrimination against people because you don't fucking like what it is that they're spreading or what they're doing. We need to segregate many of these monopolistic tendencies, right? Hollywood is a sick and disgusting place. And while you may not be a conservative
It's all
that,
California.
that wants to watch fucking, the next fucking, Blaze TV fucking movie, though some of them are pretty good. The fucking heroin one's weird though, a little too much Jesus. But like, if you want to, right? If you want to create your own films, create your own things, that create your own culture. The problem is you start saying, I think this is the line, except none of you can really define the line. You can't. You're all giving Samuel Alito's response, right? You know it when you see it, right? And that's not good enough. You can't make laws off of you know it when you see it. What you need to do is you need to say, I know it when I see it. So fuck you. You're not welcome in my community.
So we'll go to Ashley, then Lactoid, but like Scott is finally giving me the green light to oppress ANCAPs. All right, go team, go now. Let's go, Ashley.
I just think that like with lolicon and that type of stuff, right? I think that this is very damaging, and like if you would consider, I don't know, in my opinion, if you would consider banning anything that is at all like pedophilia related, I think that lolicon is like a prime example of something that probably should be.
Yeah,
Especially in like
Lolicon
VR
and Shotacon as
spaces,
well.
it's very it's more common than I'm comfortable with in VR spaces. And the issue is that there's such a high market. I don't want to get too much into the VR chat economy, but people make the models for that game, right?
Yeah,
And
I've seen it. There's a YouTube channel that I subscribe to called Lolly Police Department, where it's just like dipshits with lolly avatars. Just
yeah, no,
pretending they're
I don't
getting
mean
shot.
that. I mean that like I know that I used to have a roommate that would make adult only, but like avatars that were able to engage in sexual intercourse in VR, and like they had like weird stuff that was able to do that, and they had like they called it plug and play or something like that. It was really but like it's pretty advanced, and there's people that do that for children
So,
in VR because that's so profitable. And like the issue is this just needs to be banned. From the
Ashley,
top down, this just needs to be banned.
I'm glad you brought that up.
To a problem, to a worse problem, which is a cultural sickness.
Ashley, I'm really glad you brought that up previously. And like I haven't forgotten about you. You brought this up that there are two people. They're essentially role playing, right? You have a within this VR space. I haven't actually seen this, but I believe you when you say this fucking exists. But that like you have an adult and another adult, but one adult has an avatar that is younger, right? Like a minor, right? But that reminds me of a person that I've met, and they're that engages in like in the big little relationships, right?
That's very different.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe you can explain this because this is where I need some clarification.
Yeah,
so just
so
for
I can
people,
explain that.
for people.
Wait
Oh,
till
okay,
you
explain.
discover eunuch forums and sex forums around eunuchs.
Oh, for
Like
fuck's
there's
sake!
way sicker shit out there. Trust me.
Yeah. I'm fuck. God damn it.
So-
But please explain Big Little to everyone so they don't know what I'm talking about as well.
So for Big Little, I think that that's like more of a relationship dynamic, and like it might involve like childlike clothing, right? But a big distinction is that you're dealing with adults when you're doing that, right? And you're not necessarily, even if you're dealing with like it's weird, but even when you're dealing with like age regression stuff, which is a thing that people do, it's not like you're not ever saying I'm a child, right? You might dress that way, but you're never actually like going beyond that. Like there's a big distinction, I'd say. And like I guess what I'd also say is that like I don't know how much you know, like I play in Black Desert. There's gender lock and race lock, so I end up playing a child character. They call it a shy. It is a child that they say is 30 years old, right? I have a rule on my stream that I ban anyone that at all sexualizes my character because it's a child. I treat it like a child, and it is a child, and we need to treat it that way, right? But like technically, yeah, it's a 30-year-old, right? Like, but like I think that we could draw a distinction here that this is not a 30-year-old. It's based on a child. That's not okay.
Okay, so but hon, in big little relationships, right?
Way, right?
And-
it's the other side of that, which is that like these are adults, and even though they're saying that they're children and acting like children, there's a big distinction here because they are adults.
So in a big little relationship, you have two adults. One is like they might play the age range. The big might pretend they're like an older age, but like the big thing is the little one, one is an adult who says that they are like 7, right? Like, and I've talked to a person who engaged with this, and like they like engage in a friendship relationship that way and a romantic relationship that way. And they do stuff, right? So I don't see how for me, you haven't made a proper distinction between that and what's happening in this VR space where you have these individuals. If you could role play and you can dress up, right, in real life, you can do all these things, but like obviously not change your body because they can't do that. But if you could do all that, just now you're adding an avatar, right? Like, what is the
So
big
it's because so the distinction here is the avatar. Yes, that is exactly it. The fact that you can be a literal child and like you can make a child avatar, right? That is accurate to a child, right? That's the fucked up part. And that's where it becomes like that's why it's bad. Big Little is very different because in the end there's the end point of you're adults, and in the end if you have sex, you're adults, right? And the difference here is even though you're adults, one of you is literally wearing the skin of a child, right? I would say that like I would say that like if you are able to suddenly like morph your body into a child and people would have sex with you, that would probably be equally messed up.
I have one other thing for you, but
I
first
would
I
have
want.
the same
Well, I mean, there's another distinction too when people engage in like age play, or not that I'm fucking supporting it, but like, or like DDLG and shit like that, is that there's usually aftercare in those situations, right?
Yes.
So like in any like BDSM relationship too, right? Like if you beat the shit out of somebody because they're a fucking masochist, there's usually a period of time where it's like you're on the bed, you're watching a movie, like you're like you might even have like certain like aftercare packages and things like that to like re-normalize the situation out of the role play. When you're talking about people that are in like VR spaces and things like that, they're going to an avatar, fucking this avatar, and then they're leaving. There's no like physical kind of environment where two people are together where they engage in some form of role play, and then they come back to reality, if that
Uh,
makes sense as well. So I think that's, as weird as it is, I think it's something that's worth mentioning.
no, I know. I
Yeah,
think
you
that's
have to
interesting.
unpack and
Yeah,
debrief in these types of plays. But if you're not doing that, like things can get weird and you know, it can fuck up your headspace.
Electwood.
Yeah, there's a lot of sick fucks out there in those communities. Let's be honest.
Okay. So I'm really sick of people, and I'm not saying anyone here did this, but I just want to say it because it was kind of brought up. I'm sick of people trying to lawyer their way around being pedophiles when they're saying things like, "Oh no, the child is actually a 1,000-year-old shape-shifting dragon in the form of no, you're fucking sick. That's what it is. Like there's
Listen,
no
I've seen some anime out there, and I said, you know what? They gave me tax lolly, and it's younger sister's all you need. That anime was goated. I could not believe it, but it was great.
like,
I liked it. But
every day I hear stronger and stronger arguments for banning anime. Right? The argument is like, well, like weird stuff with children, like encourages child assault, but then anime is so closely, Anyway, it's ridiculous. But I hate to sound like a Puritan, but I'm going to on this topic, especially after whiskey. But
just say it, Lactor.
yeah,
You want to send another bomb their way? Let's
no,
just go.
no, I'm not. No, I'm not going to encourage violence. But I guess when you arrest somebody, it's violence. I'm not going to. Okay, absent arresting somebody, it's not going to encourage violence. But I am going to say that gray areas exist with all kinds of criminal actions. Scott, you said something earlier about talking about how yes, clearly the state shouldn't, or I mean, okay, you don't believe the state, but it should be illegal to psychologically damage children. And I agree, but even that can be a gray area, right? Some things can be psychologically damaging to children. Some things may not be psychologically damaging to those children. There might be a range of how psychologically damaging certain actions are. Scaring somebody in Halloween could be dramatically psychologically damaging in some ways. In other ways, it wouldn't be.
Lying about Santa Claus.
Yeah, everything is kind of on a case by case basis. Weighing pragmatism and weighing, what are the limits of our ability to enforce this, and what is the risk that these actions are going to lead to real demonstrable harm. And I think the harm generated by child pornography, whether it be CGI or lowly or any of that shit, I think that justifies state intervention. I think at that point, if you're making that shit and you're distributing that shit, the state can come in and stop you. It's not. I don't want this to be like a social, like most things I'm on board with you when it comes to like free association and shit. But there are some things, right? Like if you're part of like a terror cell and you're plotting to like bomb like some building, no, like we're coming after you. If you're doing this, we're coming after you. Like there's certain things that have such a risk of harm that we can't let you do. At least I don't think we should be able to let you do.
Right, but we're not talking about letting people do it. What we're talking about is whether or not you feel justified in using violence to stop them from doing it. What I'm saying is simply,
Yeah,
they should be ejected from the community.
Yeah,
It should be
and
ejected from
and
all
for
private
me,
property.
and for me, they would be ejected. They'd be ejected from the community through the use of police officers. That's I'm sorry.
Right, but how do you justify that? You justify that by saying, I believe in my heart of hearts, based off of my subjective opinion, that this will cause a substantial amount of harm to other people through second, third, and fourth order consequences. And I say that's a fucking ridiculous thing and doesn't actually meet a logical justification.
So okay, I'm curious. Let's say, for hypothetical sake, we did this, and the result was that society didn't just there was isolated pockets of people that kind of formed, and communities that formed absent law enforcement, and started propagating this. And this was propagating to an extent where the rate of child abuse began to go up measurably. At what point would you agree with me and say we have to put a stop to it?
Well, if the rate of child abuse goes up, sounds like you need to grab your guns, sling them around, and it's time to start giving some people some lead sandwiches because they're abusing children.
That's
True.
What if the child abusers, and this is what if the child abusers form their own fucking corporation
labor
military? Yeah, and they roll into town with their caravan where they have more guns than you, and they start raping all the kids. Fuck. I feel like
it's a war zone.
It's a terrorist.
it's a war zone.
What do you think? You think
Or the
wars?
terrorists.
You think
Versus normal
okay?
people.
So
Let's go.
so
Let's
hold on.
decide what
We're
we do.
currently the world is currently embroiled in some form of support or another in this Ukrainian-Russian conflict, right?
Sure.
They grabbed their guns, they invaded. War happens, right? But just because we don't like people, or just because we can tell that they have some evil intentions, or that the consequences might be bad by allowing a certain system of people to have power, doesn't mean that 2 years ago we had the right to just start nuking fucking Russia. We didn't have that right. We didn't have that right until they came out and fucking got in the tanks and started invading. And then Ukraine had that right to defend itself.
If you caught the Unabomber making the bombs, but he hadn't mailed them out yet, would you stop him?
I think that's a conspiracy to commit a crime. And I think that's the same thing as raising a barrel of a gun, right? If someone raises a barrel of a gun at me, right, they're showing clear and present intention towards committing a violent act that is already a form of aggression. I don't think someone making VR porn that is not explicitly designed to be shown to children and does not actually involve a child in the making process is the same thing as raising the barrel of the gun. But if I created a website and that website had code built into it where it was going to, we knew 10 minutes from its launch, it was going to launch a bunch of algorithmically things that would specifically go to children and was going to try and get around systems to go towards kids. And we knew that it was going to involve children and they were planning to do so. That is the same as raising the barrel of the gun. And we can stop those people from harming those children because they're clearly intending with by all of the evidence that we have to harm children, and they're engaging in an active process to do so.
I think you can engage in activities that maybe you're not actually intending to hurt somebody, but they probably should be illegal anyway. So one example is drunk driving. Another example could be standing on a bridge, firing pot shots down on the highway because it's fun. Or actually, some kids were just arrested not too long ago for picking up boulders and throwing it off a bridge because that's what kids do. And one of the rocks went down, hit a car, killed some 24-year-old man. Right? They weren't intending on killing him. They were just doing a reckless behavior, and it led to a harm. I think child porn is the same. You're doing a reckless behavior and leading to a harm.
Not all reckless behavior leads to harm.
Yeah, and not all rocks you throw off a bridge actually hit the car. And not all pot shots you shoot off a bridge hit a car.
It's okay. It's okay to do a consequentialist analysis, to create rules as a private property owner, to reduce to align with your goals and your interests and your values. What is not okay is to demand restitution for crimes that have not been committed, for acts of aggression that have not occurred. So if I own a bridge, I absolutely, to make sure that my insurance rates don't go up, to make sure that I don't have any legal culpability, will make a rule that says you can't throw rocks off the bridge, and if you do, I'm going to forcibly fucking remove you. And when you come to my property, you agree to pay something for violating this contract.
No, if you're standing
Yes,
on a freeway and
has
throwing
the
boulders,
same effective as it has.
if
the
you're
same
standing on a
effect as law.
freeway, if you're standing on a freeway and throwing rocks off the bridge, I don't care if the property owner says it's okay. The police come and stop you.
Right.
Because you're going
But
to hit
if the
somebody and kill
property
them.
owner, if the property owner says it's okay, and then there are people down there and it's other property, or it's the same property owner, people shouldn't drive on that fucking road. And eventually the property owner will realize that's not okay, especially after they are especially after they're negligent.
Once
So,
the body count is high enough, then they'll
Yeah,
course correct.
then people will know, right? Oh fuck, my cousin Joe, he got
You
fucking
don't need-
axed by a rock the
you
other day.
don't need-
I'm not gonna go on that freeway again.
That's the
this
free
is-
market,
this is-
baby.
But you don't need a body count to recognize that it's fucking stupid to allow people to do this.
Yeah, it's stupid and it should be illegal. You shouldn't be able to throw boulders off of a freeway. You shouldn't be able to take. You shouldn't be able to take pot shots off of a bridge because you
Right,
think
but
it's fun.
what you're engaging in, right, is you're engaging in the theory of the state as it currently exists, and I'm not doing that, right?
I know.
Because it should be perfectly legal, right? If I have a bridge on my property that I only use to move farm equipment to and fro, that I throw whatever fucking rocks into the creek under the bridge that I want.
Okay, come with me.
We're
You
talking about
agree?
public property.
You agree in the world, which I would be very surprised if it changed. There are public freeways, right? And in the world of public freeways, it should likely be illegal for people to gather on top of them and throw boulders down at the rocks. or
Right.
throw
What I'm-
boulders at
what
the
I'm-
cars driving below. That should be illegal, right?
What I'm saying is there are two thoughts of philosophy within libertarianism. One is that you should not advocate for anything that is morally justifiable. The other is, until there is abolishment of public property, that what we should advocate is that the government act as best or as close to possible as a reasonable private property owner should engage until we have that abolishment. I tend to side with Hoppe on this regard, which is to say that I agree, right, that the real issue is the existence of the public roads themselves and not necessarily the law that is attached to the original crime of the
Okay.
public property. And so I support the existence of said law as it affirms the private property and what is reasonable to the best of the capacity until the abolishment of that public property.
All right, let's roll off that. That's a great point. So it's the case now where, because we have the government, unfortunately, it steps in, like, it has the rationale of a rational private property owner. And in the same way that you said a rational private property owner would eject a child abuser from society, then the state should also come and eject people.
Yes.
Yeah. Hold on. No. You said
Eject them.
wait.
Yes.
Hold on. You said that a rational private actor should shun and reject anybody who makes child pornography, whether that be lowly.
Yes.
Yeah. So the state should come in and eject people who do that by law, by police officers, because they're acting as a rational private actor does.
Every rational private actor you think would eject someone for making art? I think we've already shown that that's not true here.
They're not rational, okay? The people
Why are you saying they're
the
not
people-
rational? There are plenty of rational people.
Okay,
As you say-
rational is fundamentally subjective. Fine.
As you drink your
I- I
alcohol,
will-
by the way, I should remind you,
I will
lactoid.
assert that anybody who thinks that lowly is okay is non-rational. This is a very firm axiom in my principles.
I think anyone who drinks alcohol, not
I
rational.
disagree.
Fair. Now we're gonna have a Machiavellian showdown about I'm gonna try to like come after
okay,
the child
so,
porn makers with
we
soldiers.
we are going to we're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna continue on to our more comprehensive content isn't over. I'm gonna say this, that like I said maybe for Doobie, like literally no one is able to like resist the siren song of Ancapistan, right? Like it will draw you into an argument every time. Like people say, people no. I was just about this. Scott,
I'm gonna answer the question.
No, Scott. I was actually just about to say that people complain. They're like, "Oh, Scott seems to take over the panel." No, everyone just keeps asking Scott questions, and Scott answers. So I'm defending you here. Like it just kind of the way it happens. People cannot
reap what you sow.
resist.
Yeah, I think Scott. I think we're actually lucky to have Scott around because he's a very very intelligent, very knowledgeable advocate for Ancapistan, and I think it's pretty rare to have somebody like that around in these spaces.
Oh, yeah.
He's the
They're
lightning
usually
rod.
they're usually autistic teenagers that just wanted
Yeah.
to piss off everybody on the internet, or people that really like economics. Which I mean, we're kind of 2 for 2 on the autism here.
Hey.
But yeah, so shout out to Scott, and like shame on you all for not being able to resist. At some point in time, you all fall for it. Okay, thank you all for being here. We are going to move on to Open Walk on panel, so the show is not over. We still have more content for you, as we always do. Stick around, hit that follow button if you haven't done so yet. If you've been here so far, and you've been enjoying this, especially with social and chat for all social media. We got Twitter where we tweet, Discord, where our Open Walk on panel will be, TikTok, and YouTube, where you'll find the VODs. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks so much. Okay, now we'll go to our, we'll give an outro out to everyone here, but again, we still have content, so stick around for that. Okay, I'll get to that later. Let's go to our friend Ashley. Ashley, it was fantastic having you here. Like, you have come out swinging on both topics. This is actually the most active I've ever seen you. And
Oh,
no, this is not. I'm not making a statement about your character or your interest. I'm just saying, it was really nice. I enjoy having you around and enjoy seeing your opinions and your argumentation, right? Because I think you're a scrappy fighter.
yeah. So actually, they gave me a little card at
Okay.
so
The Black Desert card.
yeah, no, it's all my social.
Okay.
I can't see any of that shit.
It's very blurry.
It's
This is great marketing.
Hold on.
and this is what you'll find on Ashley's channel, wherever the fuck it is. So
Find a blurry stream.
It's really and I'm trying to focus my camera. I can't. I give up. Anyway, yeah. I stream Black Desert content and I kill people in a video game. That's what I do. And then sometimes I talk about trans issues.
okay, right. As a child
try.
soldier. As a child soldier, she does that.
Okay,
thank you.
listen, I don't okay, whatever that person in your chat was saying, I do not glorify my character at all. In fact, I treat her as a villain. I use the evil character tag. I don't know what more you want from me.
Oh, okay. So it's a child perpetrating awful acts. Does that make it better for you, right? Like everything is cuter when a lolly does it, right? So. But thank you, friend. And I
Not
hope.
sex.
I walked into that one. Fair enough. All right. So Ashley, I really hope we can have you back more in the future. All right. I'll keep sending you invites. Hopefully we can have you on again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Our friend Scott, again, the Pied Piper, that leads all that leads all of you, right, with his song. Thank you, Scott, for being so kind as to join us and always being a advocate for your deeply held beliefs.
Yeah, I am Scott from Fabian Liberty. You can search Fabian Liberty pretty much everywhere. Liberty_Fabian on Twitter. Recently, I did a panel with Blair White, Chloe Cole, Buck Angel, Tulipar, Shifter of Shapes, and Sinead from GenSpec, though she had to leave not too long after. Why do I feel like I'm missing someone? Taftash, sorry. But you fuckers on Twitch tried to take me down. You couldn't take me down, but you took Taftash down for 3 days. So 2 minutes in, we were at 111 views and growing massively. You fuckers took her down, so we had to switch over to YouTube. So go check it out on YouTube. We talked about detrans and trans issues. We talked about narcissistic personality disorder and covert and vulnerable narcissism. We talked about science and pseudoscience involved in it from both sides. We talked about trans people aligning with the right and how that could be problematic. Talked about a bunch of different stuff. Chloe Cole's first panel, I think, ever. It was super good, super interesting. Definitely check us out on YouTube because we're like 100 subs away from monetization, and we lost a lot of money getting forced off of Twitch instantly when we were probably going to be in the hundreds for the night. So go check it out.
Could you do me a favor and put your link in my chat? Everyone, please, let's go help out our friend Scott. Scott is like he makes actually really good content. So and you know he's always here. He's always part of our community. He's always helping us out, sharing his time. So yeah, check him out. Check out and that panel is like it's actually really quite interesting. So I think you'll enjoy it. Everyone, subscribe to his channel. Okay, let's go to our friend Corey Campbell. Corey, you also put up a great fight tonight, and I appreciate Corey is one of the few people who he doesn't mind going it alone, right? Like he's soft spoken, but he will fight the entire panel, and I love what you do. I think it's actually really fun. So thanks, my friend.
Yeah, super, as always, grateful to be here, and always excited to get an invitation. And yeah, also grateful that despite my perpetual fence-sitting ways, I get invited back. And I hope I get invited back to just continue doing more perpetual fence-sitting. And also, just as a point of clarification, Sophie Turner, who played Sansa, wasn't even 18 in real life when she first started on Game of Thrones.
Oh wow.
Like I think the first 2 seasons, she was I think literally 15 or 16. And that scene with the attempted rape happens in the first or second season. And so according to some people, that should be banned. But yeah, super lovely to be here and to be on the panel with Doobie. As always, a pleasure. Isle of Isles, great to meet you again. Nutella, pleasure to meet you. And Revolutionary Underground, pleasure to meet you. Always a pleasure. Fellow Lactoid, I'm not going to say it. And always a pleasure, Scott, and a pleasure, Ashley. I'm Corey Campbell. You can find me on twitch.tv, CoreyCampbell84, and on Twitter and Instagram, literally it's Corey Campbell. I cover science, I do workout streams, and a little bit of politics. Thank you.
You can also find him on Pro Communist United, right?
That's right. Thank you.
Unfortunately, his brand has been hijacked by our next guest, Blacktoid. Thank you for stopping by. And again, you were fantastic today. I really loved hearing all you had to say. I would have wanted you to go longer with like your back and forth that you were having here. But we got time constraints. But seriously, thank you so much, Lacto.
Yeah, look, I'm a libertarian on most matters, but when it comes to child safety, jackbooted Stalinist. So sorry, I gotta lay down the law sometimes. But no, thank you so much, Prime. Thank you for everybody for talking with me. It was a ton of fun. I thought everybody was interesting, which is not always the case, but everybody here was very interesting and I think very smart. I thought that was great. If you like what I had to say, you can find me on Anti-Communism United on Discord and Twitch, and Anti-Com United on Twitter. It would have been the full Anti-Communism United, but they limited me on my the characters I could use. So that kind of sucks.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, yeah, maybe one day you'll come up with like your own original idea. Maybe leave Corey out of it here, but no, it's cool, right? Like this is
not enough characters is censorship, right?
Both Corey and I do not believe in IP. You do not need to be original, but you should be philosophically consistent in your libertarianism.
All right. That's something we should talk about sometime. Like whether you should like focus on that, whether you need to be consistent, right, or whether it should be focused on like outcomes, right? Well, I guess basically that's how lots of arguments go now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm consistent. I mean, anybody who wants to read my full, some people call it a manifesto, I call it a pamphlet. Just shoot me a message. I'll send it over.
Okay. Actually, I'm not sure. Have you ever sent it to me? I'm not sure if you have. You might have.
I'd actually love to read it.
Yeah, if you could send me because that's what
pamphlet.
Yeah, that's what originally got me. Let me know about this guy. So let's go to our friend Revolutionary Underground. Thanks for stopping by and joining us. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Hey, I was happy to do it. That is one of the most insane but interesting conversations I've been a part of in a real long time. Don't forget that the Revolutionary Underground's really just the community. I'm just Brad, its biggest loudmouth. So, um, anybody who wants to come check us out, we're Revolutionary Underground over on Twitch. We are relatively kind, but we don't take kindly to too much bullshit. But we are here to show you some love.
Thank you, thank you. We have Josh as well. Josh, thanks for joining us tonight.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. I really had a good time. You know, it was a pleasure meeting you. You know, Ashley, Scott, Corey, and Lactoid for the first time. Doobie as well. It was a pleasure talking with you all. And you know, I appreciate you Prime for allowing us to share all our political opinions because I think that's so important to the democratic process today. And yeah, thank you for having me.
I don't know if everyone would agree with you. Like, I allowed you to share your degenerate opinions tonight.
I mean, that's fine.
Well, I would just say fuck democracy, but I still like you, PrimeCayes.
Fair enough. Okay. Same back at you, Scott. Sincerely. Let's go to our friend Isle. Isle, thanks also for stopping by and I don't know, struggling with your tech, right? Like
Always struggling
one
with the
day
tech,
maybe
but
you'll
to make it
win.
work. Anyway, listen, unlike Josh here, I actually am here to shill. So yeah, you can find me at youtube.com, I love Isles. You can find me at DeviantArt. Link in the description of my YouTube page because I definitely listen. I could get YouTube partner. I'm just 3,998 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time away from getting partnership for YouTube. I can get the money. So it's a new channel. Just started it 2 days ago because I said, you know what, I got to take the plunge and do it. I'm doing too much on the internet to not have a YouTube channel to show for. So yeah, now I'm chilling now. But in conclusion, I think that fuck climate change reparations. We need that here. For our people, we need to be in a position of strength, but we can't be strong if our own people are getting like washed the fuck out with all the rain. So we need to help our people out, help them rebuild, help everybody, recoup their losses, especially if they had insurance. If they didn't have insurance, we should definitely make sure that they have insurance for the next time. But and make sure that we have people out there that can give them what they need um, to help them retain their property rights and things of that nature. And for the second one, I think it's very cringe to have like simulated child porn, but I think it's evil and demonic art, and I think that as a society we should be able to um, have an intellectual conversation about it, to see that this is there and it's out here and people are just degenerate and evil, and then reject it wholesale as a society. I think that's the best way to handle these types of things, kind of like with cuties. The message is that, society is over sexualizing girls way too fast, especially in the minority communities that don't necessarily have a place other than dancing and like getting into trouble with their friends in these isolated groups. So I think that, we have to take these themes to heart and actually learn what we can from them, but realize that this art is kind of degenerate, it's kind of evil, and reject it. Like we shouldn't have acceptance for like fucking kids.
If you haven't done so already, put your YouTube into my Twitch channel so that people can find you.
Okay, I will.
Yeah. And
I did.
Okay, fantastic. Doobie, our Dark Lord and Savior, thank you for coming through and putting up a great fight. I think especially as always taking a hard stance, right? Like opposite of Corey. Thank you for taking a to drawing lines in the sand because I think those could be useful because then someone has to say like on what side of it they are on. So thank you, Doobie, seriously for all your contributions.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I am Doobie. I help run the politics server on Discord, discord.gg/politics, or just politics.gg in your browser. And we are the best and biggest politics server on the Discord platform. I think we've got like over 70,000 people now. Very active, 24/7. We have tons of AMAs and events and just tons of crazy shit. And I guess I'll close it out by saying that Kanye did nothing wrong, and that if you're hating on Kanye, you're hating on me.
Oh my God. Good. See, this is a skill of Doobie, right? Like, look, triggering me really at the end. Where I have limited ability to respond. I would like to talk to you about that sometime.
I'm ready for Kanye's Yakub arc.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much.
I want to see the Yakub arc too, actually.
Lactoid. I got a request from someone, our friend Aiko, one of my chatters. He wanted to talk to you about. Sorry, I should have this pulled up. Ask me to stick around for a few minutes in open panel so I can ask about civil remedies on climate change. So
Sure.
if you have a moment, yes, please, thank you. And all the rest of you are as well welcome to stick around because we're going to go to open walk on panel. But if not, that's okay. It's spending your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion, my community. They appreciate it just as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay. All right.